eat 5 deer every year, and copper bullets, which are just a little bit, tiny bit more expensive than lead, because I know what my husband spends to go hunting anyway. So if he's going to spend $15 for a box of bullets versus 10, thinking that's not a big deal. He's got $200 boots, you know. He gets it all worked out in the end. So I know that there's no lead in the meat that I'm feeding my kids. And so for the last 10 years, we have not used lead to hunt anything that we hunt. And it was very, very easy to do. It wasn't a cost issue. We just did it. And so hopefully grab a handout, do some convincing for me, because the eagles, we took in 25 eagles, or 26 eagles at our facility. I think 20 of those were lead cases. So we're into that 60-70% of all of our eagle admits are because of lead poisoning. And that's the scary part.
Don't see the whole skull.
Yeah, here's one of them. This is what they look like.
That's a problem.
This one too.
Yeah, there's a
kind of rock.
Different animal we gotta take care of here.
Good rock. So do you know?
Oh, yeah, he's going to give you guys the mad sourdough look today, too. He does have eyes, and he opens them most of the time. But for program, he's giving you the I don't want to be doing. And I'll be able to walk around, so I'll make sure I get him to you guys. Yeah, so sometimes we cannot fix what has happened, and those non-releasable birds were allowed to keep and use for programs so that you guys can see something up close you might not ordinarily get a chance to see. So everything that SOAR does, we have permits from the Fish and Wildlife Service, permits from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. We have our conservation officer comes in and inspects our facilities. We even have permission from the Minnesota DNR to come in and to do this program this weekend. And so all the birds that SOAR works with are protected by state and federal laws. And so there's some very good protection for hawks, owls, and eagles these days. And so hopefully everyone does know we've had 2 different instances in Iowa just recently where eagles have been shot. And so I kind of quit talking about that very much during my programs, because we sort of were floating along pretty good and thinking that everyone knew that. But it is absolutely illegal. These guys have strict protection. You can never ever shoot them. You can't disturb them at their nests. All hawks, owls, and eagles have that. You can't have their feathers. You guys aren't going to get to see him. I think he's just sort of peeking out on one of them there. These guys do not have any noticeable feather tufts. You know the great horned owls, and those guys have those big feather tufts sticking up off the top of the head. Solid owls don't have those. Little black beak. They do have that facial disc of feathers. And so as we talk about all the owls today, that's something that they all have in common. That facial disc of feathers helps them to funnel the sound waves into their ears. And so they don't have any flaps sticking out the side of their head. That would not be about 14 vertebrae that make up the neck part of their spine, and that's what allows them to swivel their head around like that. So he's just not going to move. Okay. Wanted to make sure we had one that was going to open his eyes. So this guy, the fuzz off of him, here we go. This guy is our long He does have